She won't tell you this, but the way you compliment her decides whether she forgets you by morning or replays you in her mind for weeks. Most men think attraction is built on what they say. It's not. It's built on how deeply a woman feels seen when you say it. Listen carefully, because this is where most men unknowingly lose. You've been taught to compliment beauty, her eyes, her body, her smile, and yes, she'll accept those words politely, maybe even smile back. But inside, nothing moves. No spark, no emotional imprint, just another man saying what every other man has already said 100 times before. And here's the truth most men never realize: repetition kills desire. A woman doesn't fantasize about what's familiar. She fantasizes about what feels rare, what feels like it reached a part of her no one else noticed. That's where attraction begins to breathe, in the space where she feels understood, not just admired. You see, as a psychologist, I've watched this pattern repeat itself endlessly. Men chasing attention by saying more, louder, trying harder. But attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to precision. The first compliment that triggers fantasy isn't about her looks. It's about her essence. And most men miss this completely. When you tell a woman she's beautiful, you're describing something obvious, something visible to everyone. But when you recognize something about her energy, her presence, her way of thinking, now you're stepping into territory most men are too distracted to even notice. Imagine this. Instead of saying, "You're really pretty," you pause for a moment and say, "There's something about the way you carry yourself. It's calm, but powerful." Not many people have that. Do you feel the difference? One is surface level, the other touches identity. And identity is where fantasies are born. Because when a woman feels like you've seen something deeper in her, something she didn't have to explain, her mind starts to lean toward you, not because you impressed her, but because you understood her. And understanding is intoxicating. But here's where it gets even more important. You can't fake this. Women are incredibly sensitive to intention. If your words don't match your presence, she'll feel it instantly. That's why so many pickup lines fail. They're empty, scripted, disconnected from truth. A real compliment doesn't come from trying to win her. It comes from observing her. And most men don't observe, they react. They see beauty and rush to comment on it. But the man who takes a moment to notice something subtle, her tone, her rhythm, the way she engages with the world, he becomes different in her eyes. Not louder, not flashier, just different. And different is what stays in her mind at night. Here's something you need to understand deeply. Attraction isn't about overwhelming her with attention. It's about giving her a moment she can't categorize. A moment where she thinks, wait, how did he see that? Because when curiosity enters her mind, you enter with it. So the next time you feel the urge to compliment her, stop yourself for a second. Don't say the first thing that comes to mind. That's what every other man does. Instead, ask yourself, what is something about her that isn't obvious? Something most people would overlook? That's your doorway. And when you speak from that place, slowly, calmly, without trying to impress, you create something far more powerful than attraction. You create intrigue. And once a woman feels intrigued by you, she doesn't just notice you. She starts imagining you. Now here's where it gets dangerous, because the second compliment is the one that makes her feel something she can't easily control. Most men at this point make a critical mistake. They either stay too safe or they jump too far, too fast, and both destroy the tension that creates attraction. You need to understand something most men are never taught. A woman doesn't fantasize about comfort alone. She fantasizes about emotional contrast, that subtle push and pull, that moment where she feels both seen and slightly challenged. The second compliment that triggers this isn't about praising her, it's about revealing how she affects you. But carefully, because if you overdo it, you come off needy. If you underdo it, you disappear into the background. The balance is everything. Let me show you what most men do wrong. They say things like, "I really like you," or "You're amazing," or worse. They start listing qualities like they're reading from a script, and in doing that, they remove all mystery. They hand her everything up front. And what happens when there's no mystery? Her imagination shuts off. But when you express how she impacts you without fully explaining it, something very different happens. For example, instead of saying, "You're really interesting," you say, "There's something about talking to you." It's a little distracting in a good way. Now pause there. You didn't fully explain it. You didn't overcommit, but you planted something in her mind. Distracting? How? Why? Now she starts thinking about how she comes across to you. She becomes aware of herself in your presence. And that awareness, that's where emotional tension begins. Tension is not created by saying more. It's created by saying just enough and letting her mind complete the rest. This is where fantasy quietly builds, because when a woman starts wondering how she makes you feel, she naturally begins to imagine scenarios where she can feel that effect again, or even deepen it. And this is the shift you need to master. Stop trying to impress her with compliments and start inviting her into a feeling. But here's the part that separates men who understand this from men who don't. Your tone. You can say the right words and still fail completely if your delivery is off. If your voice is seeking approval, she'll feel pressure. If it's too intense, she'll feel overwhelmed. But if it's calm, grounded, almost like you're sharing a private thought without needing a reaction, that's when it lands. Because now it doesn't feel like you're trying to get something from her. It feels like you're letting her in. And when a woman feels like she's being let into your inner experience, not chased, not evaluated, just invited, she relaxes. But at the same time, her curiosity sharpens. She starts paying closer attention to you, to your pauses, your expressions, the subtle shifts in your energy, because now you've become slightly unpredictable. And unpredictability, when it's controlled, is deeply attractive. But there's something even deeper happening beneath all of this. When you express how she affects you in a restrained, emotionally aware way, you signal something powerful, that you're not easily impressed. But when you are, it's real. That's rare. And rarity creates value without you ever having to say it. So instead of flooding her with validation, you give her glimpses of your perception, small windows into how she moves you, without fully opening the door. That's what keeps her mind engaged long after the conversation ends, because she's not replaying what you said. She's replaying what you might have meant. And that's where fantasy quietly takes root, not in certainty, but in the space between what was said and what was felt. The third compliment. This is the one most men never learn. And if you misunderstand it, you don't just lose attraction, you break the very tension you've been building. Because this compliment doesn't just make her feel seen, it makes her feel chosen. And there's a difference. You see, attention is easy to get. Women receive it every day, from everywhere. But selection, that's rare. That's psychological. That's where desire deepens into something far more personal. Most men try to win a woman by elevating her, putting her on a pedestal, showering her with admiration, treating her like she's above them. And while that might seem flattering on the surface, it quietly removes the very thing that creates attraction: polarity. When you position her as the prize and yourself as the pursuer, you eliminate tension. You become predictable, safe, replaceable. But the moment she feels like you also have standards, something shifts. Not in an aggressive way, not in a judgmental way, but in a grounded, self-assured way that says, without arrogance, "I see you, and I'm deciding how you fit into my world." That's powerful. Because now, instead of you trying to earn her attention, she begins to value yours. And this is where the third compliment comes in. It's not just about recognizing her. It's about acknowledging something you appreciate while subtly expressing that it matters to you. For example, instead of saying, "You're really kind," you say, "I notice the way you treat people. That matters to me." Not everyone does that. Do you feel the shift? You're not just complimenting her trait, you're placing it inside your own value system. You're showing her that what she is aligns with what you respect. And suddenly, it's no longer just praise, it's selection criteria. Now her mind starts to process something deeper. Wait, He notices things that actually matter, and he doesn't give that recognition to just anyone. That realization creates emotional weight because now your attention isn't free anymore, it's earned. And when something feels earned, it becomes more meaningful, more memorable, more desirable. But here's the part that requires emotional intelligence. You must deliver this without ego. The moment it feels like you're testing her, judging her, or trying to assert dominance, it collapses. Because women don't respond to control. They respond to authenticity and grounded presence. So when you say it, it has to come from a place of quiet certainty, not needing her to qualify, but simply expressing what resonates with you. It's subtle, but it changes everything because now, instead of chasing her approval, you're revealing your perspective. And perspective is what makes a man intriguing. Think about it like this. Most men speak to a woman. Very few speak from within themselves, and that's why they're forgettable. But when you speak from your own standards, your own observations, your own internal world, you create depth. And depth is what her mind returns to when she's alone. This is where fantasy evolves. Not from what you give her, but from how she starts to see you. A man who notices, a man who feels, a man who chooses. And here's something you need to understand clearly. Women don't fantasize about men who want them. They fantasize about men who understand them and still remain centered in themselves. That balance is rare, and when you communicate it through your words, calmly, subtly, without trying to prove anything, you create something that most men never do. You leave an impression that lingers, because now, in her mind, you're no longer just another interaction. You're a question, a feeling, a possibility she hasn't fully figured out yet. And the human mind is naturally drawn to what it hasn't fully solved. Now everything comes together. And this is where most men either become unforgettable or completely fade out. Because it's not just about what you say anymore. It's about what she feels after you're gone. You can say all the right compliments, perfectly timed, emotionally aware, even powerful. But if there's no space left behind, no silence for her mind to wander into, the impact disappears faster than you think. This is the part no one teaches you. Attraction doesn't grow in constant presence. It grows in absence. In the quiet moments when she's alone, replaying your words, trying to understand why they felt different, why you felt different. And the reason most men never reach this point is because they don't know when to stop. They keep talking, keep explaining, keep trying to secure something that was already beginning to form naturally. And in doing that, they interrupt the very process that creates fantasy. Because fantasy needs space. It needs unanswered questions, unfinished emotions, a slight sense that there's more beneath the surface, but it hasn't all been revealed yet. So after you deliver those compliments, the ones that touch her identity, reveal her effect on you, and show your standards, you must do something that feels counterintuitive. You step back, not in a cold way, not in a disappearing act, but in a calm, grounded way that says, without words, I've said what I meant, and I'm comfortable leaving it there. That restraint is magnetic, because now she's left with the emotional imprint, without immediate closure. And what does the mind do when it doesn't have closure? It loops, it replays, it imagines. She starts thinking about the way you looked at her when you said it, the tone in your voice, the pause before your words, the meaning behind them. And slowly, without you being there, her mind begins to build something around you. That's what most men try to force with constant texting, over-explaining, or seeking reassurance. But the truth is, you don't create attraction by staying in front of her. You create it by giving her a reason to think about you when you're not there. And that requires discipline, because your instinct will tell you to follow up, to keep the momentum going, to make sure she's still engaged. But real confidence doesn't chase confirmation. It allows space for curiosity to grow. And when that curiosity is paired with the kind of compliments you've just learned, something powerful happens. You shift from being a moment to being a presence in her mind. Not because you demanded attention, but because you earned reflection. And reflection is where emotional attachment quietly begins. Now, let me leave you with something deeper than techniques. This isn't about manipulating women. It's about becoming a man who actually sees, who speaks with intention, who understands the weight of his words. Because when your compliments come from awareness instead of need, they stop being lines. They become experiences. And experiences are what people remember. So here's the question I want you to sit with and answer honestly in the comments. Have you been complimenting women to be liked? Or have you been speaking in a way that makes them feel understood? There's a difference. And that difference changes everything. If this shifted the way you see attraction even slightly, then don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's still saying the same compliments and wondering why nothing ever changes. Because once you understand this, you don't just talk differently. You become someone they don't forget.